Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power's Save Our Game. Donating 10k to Irish football for every goal England score at the Euros. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Good morning, and you're very welcome along to episode 1 of the Euro 2020 show here on Off the Ball. Shane Hannon here, and I'll be with you for the next month, essentially, for the duration of the tournament. You'll be very sick of my face come mid-July. 24 teams, 51 matches, 11 host cities across 31 days. The final, of course, in Wembley on the 11th of July. One of 8 games to be held in London. We'll be live every single weekday when there's a match on OTB Sports Radio, on the OTB Sports app, which you can download for free in the App Store or indeed in the Play Store. And we're streaming as well live across our social platforms now, the Off the Ball YouTube, the Off the Ball Facebook, and indeed on our Periscope on Twitter at Off the Ball. And our OTB Sports Euro 2020 show is live with Paddy Power's Save Our Game, which is donating €10,000 to Irish football for every goal England scored at the Euros. So one reason to support England, I guess. There, over the coming weeks, I'll be joined by regular guests Eamon Dunphy and Damien Delaney, plenty of Euros legends and football insiders as well, as we preview the upcoming matches, which get underway, of course, tomorrow night. Turkey taking on Italy in the first game of the tournament. That's an 8 p.m. start tomorrow evening. Damien Delaney will be with us shortly this morning. I'll also be joined every day by a different member of Team Off the Ball, and the man who has the privilege and honour of joining me on episode 1 is Offaly's finest, Will O'Callaghan. Will, good morning.
Shane, good morning to you. It's amazing how Harry Kane may well be responsible for showers and dressing rooms going into senior football clubs across the country, which probably wouldn't have been expected. So that little bit of extra pressure, home Euros effectively for England, where they're going in as one of the favourites to win. And on top of that, every goal they score is potentially going to help out a club in Ireland along the way. So I'm sure his relations in Galway would be delighted if it eventually has some positive consequences for them. But it is a really good morning, Shane. We've got the Leaving Cert weather out at the moment, and yesterday afternoon, just pretty much on the eve of the tournament, I went out and bought all the major football magazines, which are a lot more expensive than I remembered, to make sure that I had all the preview material ahead of Friday for that first game in Rome. I actually really look forward to the Euros. They're one of my favourite tournaments. I definitely preferred it back when it was a little bit more elite, not quite going back to the 8 teams and 4 teams of the 1970s with some of the tournaments, but I think 16 was a nice round number. As we'll probably discuss, 24 is a little bit messier in terms of getting it down into the knockout stages, but I've kind of just been consuming the previews and getting excited about it. And the little bit of break, since the Champions League final and the major leagues finished a couple of weeks ago, has kind of just got you in the mood for a little bit more football. And usually we wouldn't be having a major tournament going into the summer. We get a Copa America potentially and the Euros. So put that in with an Olympics and everything else that's happening this summer. And I'm really, really looking forward to the next 4 weeks or so. Considering
the lack of sport we had over the pandemic, I mean, to have this festival of football over the next while is just amazing. You touched on something there, Will. I mean, the guides in the magazines, like I have the Guardian one there, the Mirror as well, like they're essential reading for football fans heading into the Euros. Sticker books as well, like Euro 2000 I think was maybe my first sticker album, potentially one of those Panini jobs where you're kind of collecting your stickers, swapping them in school. Were you a sticker book man when it came to the Euros or the World Cups?
I was. Kind of first memories probably more going back to World Cup '94. I remember that, I think it was one of the breakfast cereals anyway, had cards where you could collect the entire Irish team. And I remember the fights going on in our house about the fact that we had bought extra cornflakes to try and make sure that we got every single player. I think Andy Townsend was the most difficult to get, and you could redeem some of them for posters as well. So that's kind of part of the excitement when you have these weeks leading towards it. I'm pretty sure last time around in the office for 2016, it wasn't a sticker album, it was cards. The kids seem to have really moved on to that now at this stage, trading cards that you can battle each other with. And I remember picking up a few of them when they came in different packages into the office as well. So it's all part of the fun. And it's one of those things, Shane, that if I think back probably to Euro 2000, Euro 2004, or the Euros in 00 and 04, I can probably remember most players who played in that because of the fact that you were trying to collect the stickers along the way. And you became an expert in some squads, and you could always remember the ones who were photoshopped in that were late additions into the squad too. So it's all good wholesome fun if you're going to collect them. It's an expensive way to get ready for the tournament, but I think if I was a kid again, I'd definitely be collecting the stickers for this year.
Generation Z just can't handle the stickers. They've got to go for the cards. You see, and
they can buy them online now as well, Shane. That's the problem. Like back then, like you literally had to rely on the fact that a group of your mates were buying the stickers. And potentially if you were going to a different town or city, you would always pick up a packet of stickers, because the belief was there were different players in the stickers if you went elsewhere compared to the shops locally, and everyone had to swap them back. So it was a really social thing. Unfortunately, now you can just go online and individually pick out the stickers or the cards that you don't have. So these kids don't know how easy they have it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I should say to people listening in and tuning in over the next number of weeks, we will give an overarching view of the tournament today, I guess, given it's the day before the tournament starts. We won't just focus on the big teams necessarily. You know, if you're a hipster North Macedonia fan, we will cover your bases as well, I guess. Will, your best Euros memories? Like, I was trying to think on the drive up from Monaghan this morning, and listening to yourself and Enda and Colm talk on the Team 33 Euros preview about your favourite memories. And like, I remember that Ricardo with the gloves off and the penalty shootouts in Euro 2004. Of course, Greece in 2004, the same tournament as well. And I had the pleasure of speaking with Kim Vilford recently, the Danish hero from Euro 92, who scored that second goal against the Germans in the final. He scored a penalty in the shootout against the Dutch in the semi-final. Like, there are so many incredible memories that this tournament crops up, and it's just one of those tournaments that kind of makes you nostalgic, because not just the big teams win it. You've seen Greece, you've seen Denmark. There are surprises along the way as well. Wales even getting to the semi-finals in 2016.
Yeah, and look at Iceland against England. Like, we always kind of get these thrown up at the Euros as we go along. Unfortunately, I think the year where a lot of us Irish supporters were very hopeful in 2012, where it was like, yeah, we'll go get a result against Croatia, and who knows, we might be able to get something against Italy or Spain, particularly if Spain have nothing to play for and they've already qualified. Maybe there's a chance that we can actually go and get a result against them. And unfortunately, I think the excitement lasted as long as the celebration after Sean St. Ledger's goal, and then it was absolute misery after that. So I wasn't around for 1988, and you know, the excitement that Ireland fans would have had around then. The Euros haven't been as kind to us in the ones they've qualified in my lifetime. Euro 2012 was deflating, but I thought 2016 was pretty damn exciting. Like, I mean, Robbie Brady's header has to be right up there in terms of the moments that we've enjoyed as Irish supporters over the last couple of decades. And even Wes Hoolahan's finish against Sweden at the Stade de France in the first game against Sweden. We didn't play all that well against Belgium, and we didn't play well for large stages of the France game. But you best believe we were thinking we might qualify when we went ahead against the tournament host France back in 2016. So there are those kind of memories. A lot of the really good ones probably are outside of Ireland, understandably. Getting to see that magnificent French team in 2000 back up their World Cup win from 98, where I thought they were a more refined and better team in 2000 than they were 2 years previously. Greece, obviously the shock in 2004, beating the tournament host Portugal and the raging hot favourites going into that final to win, you know, the most remarkable, probably up there with Leicester winning the Premier League, really, the Greeks winning in 2004. The coming of Spain in 2008 and 2012, either side of their World Cup success, you know, where they were able to cement themselves as one of the best international teams of all time. And then there's those Euro memories that we've seen that are on video form as opposed to ones that we witnessed and digested in person. And you look at, say, the Panenka penalty with Czechoslovakia. You look at Marco van Basten's remarkable volley back in 1988. The Euros is not quite the World Cup, but because, as I mentioned at the outset, so many times the Euros have been hyper-competitive because of the small amount of teams that are in there. I sometimes nearly look forward to the Euros more so than the World Cup.
Yeah, it's fair. Like, you touched on the 2000 tournament there, the golden goal. I mean, when Trezeguet put the ball in the net, I mean, when a goal wins you the tournament, it kind of changes the dynamic of the whole thing. It just makes it so much more exciting. One of the names you mentioned as well in that Team 33 preview was Davor Suker, that great Croatian team in the late 90s, early noughties. Like, I remember meeting him outside Lansdowne Road. I think it was after an Ireland-Croatian game, and I was just in awe. This was a guy who you had, as you said, in the sticker books, someone whose name you were so familiar with. And then to meet him in person was just incredible. But Will, I want to get your predictions. I was on OTB AM the other day with the lads, with Adrian and Owen, and like kind of running through our predictions. In terms of the teams to beat in this tournament, there's kind of been France and England in the top tier and a number of teams below that. Like, I feel like this is France's year. I know Benzema's back in. There's a bit of excitement about that. But the fact that Kylian Mbappe is in such a red hot form, Dembele is back as well from injury. He's in serious form, and that group is Group F: Portugal, France, Germany and Hungary is just incredible. But I'm just looking through the list of teams here. I guess England still favourites up there with France, but who are you backing to come out on top in this tournament?
Yeah, like, it's extremely boring to say that France are going to win, but when you look at France's first 11, when you look at what they achieved 3 years ago now at the World Cup, because we've been delayed by a year, and I think France are a little bit more attacking and a little bit more entertaining than they were in the World Cup as well. kind of reminds me a little bit of that slight jump forward between 98 and 2000, where I genuinely think the French 0-0 team were better than the 98 team that won the World Cup. I think France are more refined. Kylian Mbappe is a better player now than he was a couple of seasons ago. And
that's scary.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I mean, you're going into this tournament really with him as the player to watch, given the season he's just had for PSG. And, you know, given the performances that Kylian Mbappe has generally put in big matches over the last couple of seasons as well. Like, he was very raw going to the World Cup in 2018 and he announced himself as a star. I think he's a better all-round player now than he was then. And you mentioned Kareem Benzema coming back in, which I think a lot of us didn't expect to happen under Deschamps again, given that Deschamps had taken such a hard line on Benzema with his legal troubles, and now here he comes back after having a magnificent season for Real Madrid. The only concern about Benzema would be the slight injury that he picked up this week in their warm-up game, but the French media have been playing it down since, saying that's a dead leg, a few days recovery and he should be fine. And then Deschamps really has to work out the composition of his attack. You would imagine that it's going to be Kareem Benzema leading the line with Kylian Mbappe and Antoine Griezmann in support. And then when you consider that they've got, in my opinion, the form midfielder and maybe even the form player in the world in N'Golo Kante right now, who is going to get through the work of 2 or 3 players in the middle of their midfield, it allows them to be very flexible tactically in terms of how France want to set up. I think Paul Pogba will start. I think Paul Pogba has played very well when he's been entrusted to start for France. And then they just have to work out who the other player fits in as the third in their midfield, because last time round, they like to play Matuidi further forward. And the idea was that almost he was there to stop the fullbacks of the opposition getting forward. And Deschamps had this kind of reputation of being very much a safety first kind of manager. But the thing is, his system has worked. And like, even if, say, Kareem Benzema was to miss a couple of games, or say, if some of their star forwards are a little bit out of form, Benzema may have called him a go-kart. But we saw this week that Olivier Giroud can still come into that team and be a very good striker for them to link everything up. He scored 2 goals midweek. And it's just those kind of options that France have. And like, they have a lot of depth across their back four in terms of they could probably put out 2 really good first choice back fours. I know you're going to talk about your team of the tournament, and I know in advance you're going to pick Hugo Lloris, and I was given out to end on Team 33. Are we in 2016 if we're considering Hugo Lloris to be one of the best keepers in the tournament? I think there's always a mistake in Lloris, but there's probably enough control and goals in the French team to get them through the tournament. The only concern you'd have about France is that England loom potentially in the knockout stages because of the way that Group D and Group F are on that side of the draw. Can France beat England on English soil? If they do, it's very difficult to see any of the rest of the teams beat them. Yeah, it's going to be incredible. In terms of surprise packages, then we'll get Damien Delaney in just a few minutes here, but I like Turkey. I like Turkey for this tournament. They're in that group with Italy, Switzerland and Wales. Like we mentioned, France there, they were second in the qualifying group, only 2 points behind France. Took 4 points off them as well in that group. And the man in charge, Sinal Gunyas, he was the manager in 2002 when they came third in that World Cup in South Korea and Japan. They've always kind of been a bit brutal defensively, Turkey, but they've got Çağlar Söyüncü in the middle of that defence. They only conceded 3 goals in qualifying. I mean, last 4 in Euro 2008 as well. I think they could repeat that, potentially get a semi-final run, but do you have any dark horses up your sleeve? Yeah, Turkey are a good pick because Turkey are on the favourable side of the draw to progress right through to try and get into the back end of the tournament. And I think that group, like Italy are actually going to be one of my dark horse picks here. And I think Italy and Turkey both come out of their group. I know they play the first game in Rome on Friday, but I think they'll both qualify. And Turkey had a good qualification campaign. Their players have kind of spread nicely around a lot of the top teams in Europe this year too. And quite a few of their players played in France and were involved with Lille in terms of winning the French league this season. And I think they're a pretty solid team. I think you're not picking the worst pick there for Turkey to be one of the sleeper hits, particularly given the groups across the way. There'll be a lot of favourable opposition potentially for them in the knockout stages. I like Italy because I think Roberto Mancini has got Italy back to basics again in terms of they become very, very difficult to break down in terms of they don't concede too many goals. Donnarumma has kept 7 clean sheets in a row in their last competitive matches. And they go in here as a team that are going to be a tough nut to crack because they've got a defence that's based around experience. They're gone back to a kind of a catenaccio, and then they're going to try and just break teams down, win by the odd goal as they go along. And oftentimes in tournament football, that works quite well. And maybe sometimes we forget how good a coach Mancini is because, after he left Man City, they changed around and maybe kicked on a level attacking wise. But City were still a good team under Mancini. And I think Italy, should they get out of the group, which I expect them to do, and I think they'll edge out Turkey in the first game, Italy will be a very tough team to beat on that side of the draw as well. I think people haven't really been talking them up a huge amount, but they're very, very solid, Shane.
They've certainly come in under the radar a little bit, Italy, for this tournament for sure. I'll quickly run through my rolling all-stars. You mentioned it there, Will, my team of the tournament. This will be kind of changed as the days go on and as the tournament goes on. But I had to pick one in advance of the tournament and the team I expect. So we'll get that up on screen for you now at home. Hugo Lloris, as you mentioned, in goal for France. Fifth major tournament as France captain. Lost to Portugal in the final, of course, 5 years ago. I just chose him, Will, because at the end of the tournament, I think he's going to be the man holding the trophy aloft for France. He's going to be that captain. And look, yeah, maybe I went with a bit of Lloris nostalgia for my picking goals, but went for him all the same. The back four, Mario Fernandes for Russia. He's a Brazil-born full-back. Made his debut for Russia back in 2017. A big attacking threat as well. And Russia could do some damage in this tournament, I think. So he's my right back. So
one of only 5 players, sorry to cut across you there, Shane, who've played for a different country before playing at the Euros for someone else this time around as well. So I think you can guess who one of them is that's going to be playing for England. But Fernandes, yeah, he swapped. I think it was 4 seasons ago he made that change. He'd been capped by Brazil just after the World Cup in 2014. So he's there as one of the switchers. But yeah, the CSKA Moscow man will get up and down, all right.
So he's versatile. He's versatile is what you're telling me. Soyuncu for Turkey, the Leicester City man. I've gone with him alongside Rafael Varane in the centre of the defence. Kieran Tierney for Scotland at left back. I'd love to see the Scots do some damage in that group with England and beat them at Wembley. That would just be great. Midfield 4 then, Memphis Depay for the Dutch. The Dutch lost all 3 of their games in Euro 2012. Haven't won in the Euros since back in 2008. But Depay, 6 goals in 6 qualification games. He's been playing very well. N'Golo Kante for France, enough said. Don't have to argue that at all. Kai Havertz of Germany. I mean, he ran the show for Chelsea in that Champions League final, so he had to be in there. Phil Foden's a lot of people's pick for the young player of the tournament as well. So I stuck him out in the left. This is a very attacking midfield, I have to say. So I kind of just put Kante in there to do all the sweeping up, and the rest of them can bomb forward to their heart's content. And then up front, Romelu Lukaku for Belgium. Only 2 goals in Euro 2016, both of them against the Republic of Ireland, unfortunately. But he's Belgium's highest scorer of all time, and this could be a big tournament for him if Belgium can go deep into this tournament. And a bit of a hipster choice alongside him, Burak Yilmaz for Turkey. 35 years of age, 17 goals in all competitions for Lille this season as they won Ligue 1 in France, their first title in France in 10 years. But he's in fantastic form, second highest scorer of all time for Turkey. So it might be a long shot for the golden boot of the tournament. You have the opportunity to rip my team apart, Will, but also you've come up with your own picks as well.
Yeah, I'll give you a few alternatives. A couple of things that kind of stand out in your team. You've been very sneaky putting Scotland's left centre-back out at left-back, where Robertson is going to play while Tierney will play in a 3. You've put in the Serie A Player of the Year in Romelu Lukaku. I think there's no reason to think that after the season he's had under Antonio Conte, where by Lukaku's own admission, he's added a lot to his game and he's become much more difficult to stop. Like once upon a time, Lukaku used to be a player that was just in the box and he was a position player. Lukaku now gets far more involved in the build-up, and I thought he was terrific for Inter Milan as they finally got their hands back in the Serie A trophy this year. Kai Havertz, I think you're hoping that his late season form with Chelsea will explode with Germany. And like Havertz and Werner, Germany are badly going to need them if they're going to get out of that really difficult group that they're in with France and Portugal, in my opinion, the favourites to come out of it. And Phil Foden's an interesting one, Shane, because will Phil Foden start? Because I think you have to start Mason Mount. And I think Gareth Southgate is probably going to be inclined to play Marcus Rashford from the left. And if he decides to play Jude Bellingham in midfield alongside Declan Rice and Mason Mount, I wonder, is there a position in the England team for Phil Foden right now? He could definitely be a breakthrough player and he's going to play. It's not like England are going to have a fixed 11 for the entire tournament, but I wonder when that game against Croatia comes up at the weekend, does Phil Foden start? The team I've picked for my value here is I've gone for Donnarumma of Italy in goal, because I think Italy are going to be really good defensively. I think he's been great. He's probably going to play for PSG next season. He's going to leave AC Milan at the end of his contract this month. I've gone for Man City's second most creative player of the season in João Cancelo as my right back for Portugal. A bit like City, he's probably going to be named to play at right back, but will pop up in positions all over the field. So a bit like Fernandes, I'm going for a guy who's going to get really involved. He's probably, I would think, Cancelo a good fancy football pick if you're looking for someone to contribute with goals and assists further up the field as well. Gone with another Portuguese player at centre back in Ruben Diaz, Premier League's best player last season, won both awards. He's going to be crucial to Portugal being good at the back, particularly in that very difficult group. I've gone for an Inter Milan player who was, again, fairly heralded with the way he played for them this season, in Milan Skriniar of Slovakia, who, if Slovakia have got any chance of getting out of their group, Skriniar is going to have to be brilliant. Difficult to pick at left back. I think Gosens might start at left back for Germany and could be really, really good. But I've gone for Jordi Alba off the back of probably his best season since 2012 when he was one of the players of the tournament back when Spain lifted the Euros. Midfield, I won't argue with you. N'Golo Kante is going to be my holding player alongside Joshua Kimmich of Germany. Kevin De Bruyne, couldn't leave him out despite the fact he's just had surgery in his orbital bone and is probably going to be wearing a mask for Belgium's first couple of games. But if Kevin De Bruyne gets back to form, Belgium, who maybe are a little bit underrated going into this tournament, given that people are saying, they've been crap at previous tournaments, I think Belgium could have a really good one over the next few weeks. And then up front, I've just gone stacked. So Harry Kane, who's going to score loads of England goals that are going to bring us lots of money for clubs around the country. Robert Lewandowski, given that he's just become the record scorer in the Bundesliga and he's Poland's great hope once again going into this tournament. And I couldn't leave out Kylian Mbappe as my third forward. And breakthrough star for me, he's had a long season and he's been run into the ground with the amount of games he's played. But Pedri, remarkably, he was playing in the Spanish second division 2 seasons ago. I think if Spain can put the COVID-19 issues behind them and Pedri gets on the field, Pedri can have an Iniesta-style tournament and be the breakthrough star. Neither of us are being all that exciting in terms of picking Phil Foden and Pedri, where they've both got so much quality. But I think both of them could be really, really good over the next few weeks.
Yeah, Pedri's a good shout. I mean, only 18 years of age. You forget he has only 3 caps for Spain, but surely we'll add to that during this tournament. But Spain and Poland being in the same group is whetting the appetite somewhat. Reminder, our OTB Sports Euro 2020 show is live with Paddy Power's Save Our Game, donating €10,000 to Irish football for every goal England scored at the Euros. Damien Delaney, the former Republic of Ireland international and Premier League footballer, is with us now. Morning, Damien.
Morning, Shane. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Were you a sticker book fan? Were you a man that collected the stickers and the cards when you were younger for all these tournaments?
I don't vaguely remember having something, but it wasn't a huge part of what I was doing. But I do vaguely remember having a sticker book at some point. Yeah.
You were too busy playing football, no doubt. What we were talking about the French there before you come on, Damien, and kind of picking our dark horses for the tournament. I went with Turkey, and Will, what was your pick for the dark horse again? That you went with?
I went Italy. We're both going for the same group, so one of us is going to be wrong probably.
Who are you going for, Damien, in terms of the winners of this tournament ultimately, and maybe a dark horse team that can strike a bit of a run together?
Well, funny enough, I just came in when Will was asked for his dark horse, and nearly fell off the chair when he picked Italy as a dark horse, a team that's won 20 in a row. I think they have to be front and centre of the favourites talk. I thought dark horses were somebody that kind of... I mean, my dark horse was going to be not for the tournament, but have a really good run and potentially get really far. Is Denmark, when you look at the way their group is set up. They're obviously going to finish second in their group. When you texted me last night picking dark horses, I was looking for dark horses. So I kind of was looking through the groups, and if they finish second, they will not play a superpower until they get to the semi-final. And I think that we've seen an awful lot of Denmark, obviously ourselves, over the last number of years. I think they're a good side. They're capable. They're defensively solid. They have got some goals in them. They've got a very good goalkeeper. And I think that they might get on a run to the semi-finals and kind of calling on the spirit of 1992, am I right in saying, Shane, is it? Yeah. So it might get to the semi-finals, and then you never know. You know, then you're obviously going to come against a superpower in the semi-finals, and they could get lucky on a one-off game, and then you never know. So I would cautiously say Denmark, but probably if you're kind of on the same lines as you guys, I'd probably pick Belgium then. That's my dark horse.
Pick France as your dark horse. Do a similar thing to Will. No, it's a fair point. And like Will was mentioning earlier, the fact that, you know, it's a 24-team tournament. I think it's only the second Euros that have had 24 teams. Some might say the quality could get a bit diluted by adding more teams in. But do you think the quality heading into this one, Damien, is fairly high considering the teams involved?
It is, but what I noticed, I think, in the last World Cup is the first week of the tournament was, you know, a couple of good group games, but there was an awful lot of games where you could argue the point that some of those teams shouldn't have been at the Euros. You know, when the Euros is kind of 18 teams, you get good games from the get-go, and obviously with 3 teams getting out of a group, certain groups, you know, you might end up with some teams that really shouldn't be in the knockout stages of a European Championship. If you're a purist, of, you know, thinking of that back to Jack Charlton's time when it was a, you know, 16-team tournament. I think at one point it was even a 12-team tournament. So, you know, that's when you get good games and the elite are playing each other very, very early. But look, UEFA have obviously extended it or expanded the tournament to include an awful lot of teams like North Macedonia and teams like this are now in there. So, it's good, but I think the tournament, it won't be a case if we sit down and watch every game. Because when I was growing up, you sat down and you watched every game. I think you look at the fixture list and you will pick and choose a couple of games that you won't probably.
No, you'll watch all of them. Go on.
I probably won't, to be honest. There's some of them there I was thinking I'll give them ones a miss.
The fact that there's finally and thankfully fans, like I know Wembley, I think it was maybe 22,000 around. Baku and St Petersburg can host around 30,000 fans, in fact, for their games, and I know Budapest as well is something along those lines. But in terms of the number of fans being at matches, that's going to change the atmosphere drastically. Do you think it puts more pressure on the likes of England playing at Wembley in front of their fans, or is it an obvious advantage?
Oh, it's a huge advantage. I mean, especially England getting home games in the Euros, if you were playing against England in an empty stadium, it's been said many times that it almost levels the playing field, that, empty stadium's an empty stadium. But England fans just, even when you're driving up Wembley Way as the away team, you're going to see an ocean of St George's crosses and fans, and you're going into a hostile environment. And even though it won't be a full house, you'll still have some sort of intimidation factor. And England will obviously get a boost from it as well, having their own fans cheering, because, regardless of what you think, England fans do get behind their team. They really, really do. And the party atmosphere will be going, as all countries will, actually, not just England. That's what I'm trying to say, is that, there is a good party spirit and a good feel-good factor. And I suppose when you look back at Euro 96 and what it did for England then, they'll be hoping for something similar.
In terms of the Golden Boot, we'll take a run through the groups in just a moment, but Golden Boot wise, like a stat that jumped out at me in research for the Euros was 9 players at this tournament have more international goals than Harry Kane, which kind of shows the quality of goal scorers that we have on offer. And if you look at the favourites at the moment, Romelu Lukaku and Harry Kane are pretty much neck and neck. You've Kylian Mbappe, and then Ronaldo, Memphis Depay, Kareem Benzema. Who are you backing for top goal scorer this tournament? It could be anyone. You need a deep run in the tournament, and you probably need, I guess, a few handy-ish games in the group stages.
Yeah.
Go on, Will, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it all depends, Shane, as well, when it comes to the tournament, that we've seen this happen at both World Cup and Euros, where one team might hand out an absolute spanking to somebody in the group stages, and someone scores 3 or 4 goals and puts themselves right in line to win the Golden Boot, even if they don't play that deep into the tournament. So you always have to consider that, like the potential, say, mismatches along the way. And you could see someone like, Lewandowski, who is in such remarkable form at the moment. If, say, Poland score a lot of goals in one game, it mightn't matter if Poland don't get to a semi-final. Like, if you're backing Harry Kane, you're probably backing Harry Kane with the assumption that England go all the way to the last 4 of the tournament. And similarly, if you're going, say, for Kylian Mbappe or Kareem Benzema, the value on that is that you would expect that France are going to go right deep into the tournament. Similarly with Romelu Lukaku. So, understandable, you'd have to pick those players as favourites, but I would give a slight warning about if you're going to go for, say, Cristiano Ronaldo or for Mbappe, that their group is extremely difficult and they're going to face a couple of very tough games in the group. So there is that possibility that those games might just be won by the odd goal. Don't know what you're thinking about that, Damien.
Yeah, I fully take your point, and there's something's ringing a bell there when you said the point you made about going deep in the tournament with Harry Kane in 2018. Someone can find that stat. I think he scored all his goals in the group and he kind of limped to the Golden Boot, I think, in the World Cup. So that's a very valid point. I'm going to go with Ciro Immobile for top
left
scorer.
field.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
16-1.
Yeah, I think he's 20 goals. He's a serious finisher. The way Italy are set up, I think he will score goals almost certainly. I think that's my left field one, I suppose. But I obviously have to speak with Lukaku as well. He's done really, really well. Had a great season. So I think if I was going for a top scorer, I would go Immobile or Lukaku.
Interesting shouts, very interesting shouts. Mark Lawrenson went with Antoine Griezmann when he was speaking to myself and Owen OTB AM the morning. Another left field shout. Lads, let's take a run through the groups then. We'll start with Group A: Italy, Switzerland, Turkey and Wales. So I guess Italy, I know, Will, you're big behind them. Mancini has only tasted defeat twice in his 28 games in charge of Italy. Damien making the point that they're on that 25 game unbeaten run. They're in serious form, and the strength and depth as well they have in that squad. Won all of their qualifying games. So, will make the case for Italy?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they don't top that group. I mean, Turkey is probably the most difficult game that they're going to face, and that comes first up. So it's a key first night in Rome for them. They've got a couple of home fixtures, which helps them in terms of getting out of the group too. And I don't know, I kind of get the feeling that Wales are very unlikely to repeat, lads, what they did back in 2016 when they seem to be in a much better place going to it. And that's even quite aside from not having their manager because of his legal issues currently. Like, Wales have definitely dropped down a bit. We've got to see so much of them through the last two campaigns between the Nations League and being in our World Cup group too. And I just think, for me, Italy and Turkey are the teams who are going to qualify. And I'm not expecting Wales to actually throw an upset up this time around. I would imagine Italy first, Turkey second.
Like, when you look at that group, like, I've made the case for Turkey, and I do think they will go deep into this tournament. But Switzerland, travelling wise in the group stages, they're the most travelled team, so 7,740 miles. The first game is in Baku against Wales, then they fly to Rome to take on Italy, and back to Baku to play Turkey. They're a decent team, the Swiss, last 16 in the last Euros. They also in the last 16 in the World Cup in Russia in 2018. They have a few defensive uncertainties, possibly, the Swiss team, but they're still a decent squad. Granit Xhaka, Xherdan Shaqiri among them. And then kind of Wales, Damien, like 2016 was the summer of their lives over in Wales. I mean, they had 8 tournaments between 1960 and 2014 that they missed out on by one single game. So they've had plenty of heartbreak over the years. But do you think lightning can strike twice? Can Wales do it again as they did in 2016?
I don't think so. I don't think they'll go as far as what they did to the semi-final. As you pointed out there, they were in a really good place going into that tournament. Everything was really, really solid. They were playing a great brand of football, and they seem to be on a real high. They're still a decent side. I think Italy will mosey on out of that group fairly unblemished. And then I do think it's a good scrap for second between all three of them. Trying to call or predict who will come out of that those games are going to be really, really tight. I mean, it could even be a goal difference one that gets you second in that group. And I think all three of them are capable of. As you said, Switzerland are, really, really good side, solid enough. It's Turkey also, and Wales. So it's too tight to call for me, that one. But Italy, I think, will mosey on out of that. I could envisage a situation where they kind of have the group wrapped up with a game to spare and maybe get to rest some players, and similar to what we did in 2016, someone could beat them and sneak out of the group. So something along those lines is what I would think for that group. You
look at Gareth Bale, Damien, and like I know he only scored 2 goals, I think, in qualifying, but fairly recent hat-trick in the Premier League for Tottenham, and he's nearing 32 years of age. He's often prioritised Wales. Certainly when he was at Real Madrid, he prioritised Wales and golf. But this could well be his last major tournament for Wales, unless they make the next World Cup. But how big a tournament is this for him to kind of lead the line, to show the way, and to prove that 2016 wasn't a one-off?
I think it is, and I'm not sure he would see it that way. He seems like a pretty laid-back fella who just kind of saunters around, but he's well rested going into this tournament. He had a large portion of maybe 3/4 of the season off, and then really only came into the team the back end, which means he's probably not going in with any fatigue issues or any confidence issues, because he finished the season brilliantly, and he does love playing for Wales. I wouldn't say it would be his last tournament. If I saw him in Qatar next year, which is only a year away, wouldn't at all be surprised. And if I saw him playing for Wales at 35, 36 years of age, I would be surprised either, because I think he is the type of guy that would just show up for Wales, even if he was playing at any level, really, So big tournament for him. He's a type of personality that if he just gets in the mood early, he really could rip this tournament up. He always has that in the locker, but unfortunately, you just don't know motivation-wise where he's at and whether he's dialed in. But if he wakes up on the right side of the bed, he could really have a good tournament.
Yeah, that's a pretty tough group to call, to be fair, Group A. So Italy, Switzerland, Turkey and Wales in Group A. Moving on to Group B, lads. Belgium, Denmark, Finland and Russia. Another interesting group. Belgium, many people's favourites. They were traditionally always people's dark horse pick, but no longer can be considered really a dark horse. Their best at the Euros in history was runners-up in 1980. But when you look at the creative options in that squad, I mean, Hazard, Lukaku, Tielemans, De Bruyne, Mertens as well. I mean, Damien, this is a seriously dangerous Belgian team.
Absolutely. They've been there, done that. They have the ability. I just worry slightly at the back. looking through the squad, people like Thomas Vermaelen, Vertonghen, and Alderweireld. I know Dedier, how to pronounce his name. So I know that he's a decent defender, but I just think they're aging ever so slightly at the back. Thibaut Courtois, decent goalkeeper. Is he as good as what he was? Is he still world class? And I would probably put England in the same category, as Belgium, that fully loaded going forward, look a great side. But if you're going to win a major tournament, you have to be able to withstand the kitchen sink being thrown at you. And at some point in the tournament, someone is going to do that to you. And more often than not, you'll get caught out. And I just think that Belgium are very similar to England insofar as defensively, I'm not certain about them. But their attacking flair will get them so far, absolutely. But I don't see them going on to win it. But it could go deep, of course.
Elsewhere in this group, like I know you've made the case there, Damien, already for the Danes, but Finland, I mean, as Irish fans, we lost 1-0 at home and away to them in September and October of last year. If you want a second team as an Irish fan as well, Daniel O'Shaughnessy, that guy for Finland, a father from Galway and a mother from Finland, so maybe we could support him for the laugh, I guess. A decent player, Tim Pukki as well up front for the Finns. Their first ever major tournament, so they'll be really, really excited. This is their Euro 88 essentially, from an Irish perspective. But Will, elsewhere in that group, like I assume you're going with Belgium to top the group, but who do you think will join them?
I think the group will more than likely finish as you read it out, really. Maybe Russia might finish third and Finland bottom, but Russia have their own issues as well. Now, I know you said there people are looking for a second team, but myself and Eamon Dunphy thought we sorted that one out for everyone. Getting a second team and supporting England, I suppose. But if people want to support Finland, they can do.
Well, Nathan Murphy will be supporting England, and he bought the English jersey, I think, for his kids. So there are English fans out there in Ireland, I think, and certainly will be following their games. Will, who else do you reckon in that group yourself?
Yeah, I like Belgium and Denmark here. The one concern about Belgium, which Damien has already mentioned, they're one defensive injury away from Thomas Vermaelen having to come in to start. And it's a creaky defence in terms of their age profile, are all over the age of 30. And can Belgium do enough in attack against the really elite teams in order to beat them, even having to compensate for that defence? It's exactly the same arguments I'm sure we're going to have about Conor Cody and John Stones starting for England. Maybe they can still do enough and actually get over the line, even having to compensate for that. But Belgium have kind of been, I think, a little bit downplayed going into this, because we've previously been really hot on Belgium going into tournaments. I think back to 2016, I know they played really well against us in the group stages, but people thought naturally, particularly as they had a lot of top stars playing in the Premier League at the time, that Belgium were going to kick on and possibly even win that tournament. And then they flattered to deceive a little bit. The concern you'd have about Belgium too would be Eden Hazard's form over the last couple of seasons, because he was going into 2016 in red hot form from Chelsea. And really, he's only played a handful of games for Real Madrid over the last 2 years because of his injuries. And his output in terms of goals and assists have been way down too. Like, his performances have not been good. So you're kind of expecting him to sparkle, and you're hoping that Kevin De Bruyne is in some kind of fitness and sharpness, given that he's been getting medical treatment over the last couple of weeks. That's key to whether Belgium do well or not. Denmark are really solid. Again, we've seen Denmark a lot playing against the Republic of Ireland. They're a little bit short up front in terms of, is Martin Braithwaite going to be the player who's going to score goals from the number 9 position? But they can definitely add goals from their attacking midfielders. And, you know, Christian Eriksen seems to be coming back to form. Not sure if he's going to get transferred away from Inter Milan this summer, but it's potentially a really good tournament for him to put himself into the shop window too. And if Denmark are going to have a big tournament, they're probably going to be reliant on Christian Eriksen to do a lot from that attacking midfield position. But when you consider they've got players like Delaney, Kasper Schmeichel, they've got a good core group of players, and I would expect they're going to be too good, particularly for Russia, who are the other contenders, I think, to come out of that group. We always have to be mindful that a third team could come out of these groups, but generally the third team is going to come out where one team takes a few kick-ins, and I'm not sure if this is the group for that.
Yeah, of course, it's the 4 best third-place teams across the groups that will also progress to the last 16, along with the top 2 in the groups automatically. Russia are interesting as well. Will, I mean, like Artem Dzyuba, that Zenit St. Petersburg player for them, like he's a bit of a legend, although half the fans hate him. I think since he left Spartak Moscow, there was a bit of a split down the middle of the Russian fans. But I mean, they beat Scotland 4-0 in qualifying as well. That was late 2019, albeit, but they're a decent team. Russia always hard to beat. Quarterfinals in the last World Cup on home soil in 2018. So that is a fascinating group as well. Group B: Belgium, Denmark, Finland and Russia. So we'll keep a close eye on that one. Group C then, lads, is a quirky one. I think this is the group for the hipsters, maybe. Austria, Netherlands, North Macedonia and Ukraine. So Group C, I mean, Austria are an interesting team. David Alaba, of course, the leader in that team as well. He's very versatile, probably one of the best left backs in the world, but he can play a multitude of other places. Damien, I mean, who are you most looking forward to seeing in this Group C?
Wow, that is, as you said, the quirkiest group of them all. I saw Austria playing against England there, and I mean, they are really very, very functional side. They're decent, defensively solid. They don't offer a whole pile going forward. The Dutch are in disarray at the moment. I think a lot of people are really upset after what's happening insofar as Ronald Koeman put the Dutch in such a strong position, really, really strong position, a year out from the Euros. And obviously the new managers come in and there's an awful lot of disharmony. You know, anytime you look at the Dutch, a lot of people are really unhappy with where the team has gone in the last 12 months. A lot of people complaining about the manager's insistence on playing a certain shape. It doesn't suit the team. And it just doesn't seem to be going in. I mean, they drew 2-2 with Scotland and they were lucky to get that draw. I'm going to say that I don't see the Dutch getting out of this group. I know that's a huge statement, but I think that, I know there's 3 teams to get out of it, so they might, but ordinarily you're thinking that's a walk in the park for the Dutch. They're going to finish top. They might get out of it, but I think they're going to scrap to get out of it, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did finish third and not make it out of the group. So that leaves you with Ukraine, really, who is my pick to top this group.
Ukraine are an interesting team. We'll get to them in a second. But I mean, Frank de Boer is what a mad appointment. And like, one quote from him in the build up to this one, Damien, was, "We are between the 4th and 8th strongest team. We are good enough to reach the semi-final, but of course aim to win the tournament." That wouldn't fill you full of confidence. Maybe he's just being realistic. I mean, have you spoken to anyone from your Crystal Palace contacts book from that absolutely abysmal period he was there in 2017? I think it was the first 4 games of the season they lost, didn't score a goal. I mean, what was the vibe in South London after that Frank de Boer appointment and I guess tenure?
Well, I was there, so I didn't need to speak to anyone.
What was he like? What was like? He was quoted. Didn't someone call him the worst Premier League manager in history? Jose Mourinho, I think.
I witnessed the whole thing from start to finish. I was training with the youth team, so that'll tell you what my take on the whole thing was, and where
we'll get the inside scoop.
Where he saw me. Look, I'm not going into that at all. I mean, look, he left after 4 games. He then went to, I think he came from Inter Milan to Crystal Palace. He got sacked after a similar amount of time at Inter Milan, got sacked at Palace. He went out to Atlanta and disenfranchised probably the most supported team in the MLS in Atlanta. They averaged something like 90,000 home games, and they were a rip-roaring team. And I think they won the league, or whatever it may be, whatever it's called out there, conference. So they won their league out there. And then he came in, and again, the same question marks about the brand of football that he plays. It's very, very, very slow, very methodical, retaining possession to the point of, like, trying best to think about how to word this, retaining possession to the point where you just don't know what's happening. You know, you quite happily go back to the goalkeeper, go back to the centre-back, go back to the goalkeeper, go back to the centre-back. He would happily waste time. That type of, I mean, if you thought Louis van Gaal was bad at Manchester United, this guy is obsessed with possession to a whole other level. He got the Dutch job somehow. He had a really good spell at Ajax where he won 4 or 5 leagues in a row. That got him the Inter Milan job. Dutch football, I don't know if anyone watches it on a Sunday morning. Sometimes I do. Dutch football is very, very slow and very, very methodical, and it is a case of, possession, retaining, to the point where you just want to, throw yourself out of a window sometimes because it's not really going anywhere. But look, the murmurings are the same from Inter Milan to Crystal Palace to Atlanta to now the Dutch team. So he has a certain way of doing things, and I don't think it's a very modern way of playing the game.
Yeah, going to be fascinating to see which Dutch team turns up to this tournament for sure. Like elsewhere in that group, North Macedonia 62nd in the world rankings now, up from 162nd a few years ago, so they're not doing bad things. Goran Pandev, their 38-year-old veteran striker, and Alioski as well, the Leeds player in that North Macedonian squad. And then you've Ukraine. Like, I know, Damien, you said that they could top that group. They very well could top this group because they're in serious form. And between 2017 and 2020, they only lost once in 22 games. They, of course, had that win over Spain in the Nations League as well. So, Will, who do you see kind of getting through this group? Do you agree with Damien that the Dutch might not make it?
Yeah, I was smiling when you were saying that to Damien, because I remember having a conversation with him on Off the Ball one night where we talked about Frank de Boer and that very short period he had in charge, and Damien spending most of his time with the 23s and then being welcomed back in pretty much when de Boer was out the gate. But
youth team.
The youth team, sorry.
I didn't even get the 23s.
Well, the thing I remember about that story as well is that Damien's kit was down with the U team as well, so it was decided before he even got to training.
It was a different training ground, yeah.
Lovely. Well, look, the thing is, the Dutch are in absolute disarray, Shane, going into this tournament. Like, Ronald de Boer had that very entertaining quote last weekend about his brother, where he said that Johan Cruyff would be turning in his grave with the type of football that the Dutch team are playing going into these Euros. And a lot of Dutch people can't comprehend why they're playing a 5-3-2, which is really narrow, when they've got loads of good attacking players. Like, it seems totally foreign to anyone who's watched the Netherlands over the last 20-30 years that they wouldn't play with wide attackers. And as a result, I think there's actually a talented core group of players there, like Matthijs de Ligt, like De Jong in midfield, Wijnaldum, who's probably going to be going to PSG, and Memphis Depay, who's had a great couple of seasons for Lyon. But the problem is that Memphis Depay is now their main goal threat. He's also their set-piece taker. If they're to get out of this group and if they're to go well in the tournament, they're relying on Memphis doing nearly everything because the ball is going to come to him so centrally. The Dutch are going to play horrible football. Ukraine, I've got to salute them for putting Crimea onto their jerseys, where potentially they could play Russia at some point in St. Petersburg if both teams get out of the group, which could be extremely entertaining and difficult for UEFA if that were to happen. I think Ukraine have got a really good chance of coming out. Like Damien said, you know, we see a lot of the Austrian players playing in the Bundesliga, particularly the defensive players, and Ireland have played them a few times recently too. They don't score a huge amount of goals, but I don't see, say, North Macedonia beating them. So there's a very good chance that I think a third team comes out of this group because of the fact that North Macedonia are probably going to lose all of their games. So I would imagine for that reason alone, we're looking at three teams coming out. Coin toss probably between Ukraine and the Dutch for me at the top. But Austria should probably get out of the group as well. But look, Goran Pandev, as you mentioned, probably the most relevant Macedonian since Alexander himself going into this tournament. But a big surprise that they actually qualified. And I think unless there's a miracle story and they pull form out of nowhere, it's difficult to see North Macedonia be one of the three teams that will come out of this group.
Yeah, let's hope they can be as great as Alexander was. Group C then, Austria, that is Austria, the Dutch, North Macedonia and Ukraine. We'll fly through the remaining groups, lads. Group D, Croatia, Czech Republic, England and Scotland. Damien, can the Scots get out of this group?
They can. I think they're a decent side. Steve Clark and Stephen Reid have done a wonderful job up there at Scotland. Really got the nation behind them. They're playing really in a patriotic manner. They really look like they've bought into what the manager is doing, and there does seem to be a good feeling about them, and that can carry it very, very far. It's not the most daunting of groups. So I think they can. They absolutely can get second in this. I would expect England to top this group, but I think England have been overhyped for me a little bit. I think they've got some serious issues at the back. The Ben White decision, the right back situation, maybe in time, the thought process or the pressures that were applied for that situation to come about might be released. But then to go and pick a centre-back in Ben White, because when you look, they have Stones, Maguire, obviously their first two choice centre-backs. I think Conor Cody's only going because England might play three at some point. I think they do play three centre-backs because they probably don't trust the two centre-backs that they have in Stones and Maguire. So they kind of think, sometimes managers think that there's a strength in numbers in terms of having one extra centre-back in there. And it does free up midfield positions because they are loaded in that area as well. But Ben White came out of left field. I mean, I was so sure that James Ward-Prowse was going to get that Trent position. He is a smashing footballer, durable, reliable, energetic. He's different to all the type of midfield players that they have. His set-piece delivery is brilliant. He had a stormer in the last friendly game. So for the manager to overlook him and take Ben White, I'm probably thinking something along the lines of Tyrone Mings hasn't really sold himself in the couple of games. He wasn't great. He didn't play poorly, but he didn't play great. I think the forearm smash in the first friendly, I think it was very, very strange for Tyrone Mings. He was not that type of player. So maybe Southgate's a little bit unsure about playing him, especially if Harry Maguire doesn't make it, make the first game, or if they're going to try and build Harry Maguire into it. Then they're thinking, do I go with John Stones, Tyrone Mings? And I think Ben White maybe offers him something a little bit different, but it seems a little bit panicked to me. And it seems a little bit kind of making it up on the fly with four right backs, and then Ben White overlooking James Ward-Prowse. So I think England will probably go quarter-final. They're going to top their group, and then they're going to play one of the group of death teams if they do top their group. For some weird reason, if England finish second, they play a team that finished second. I don't know why it's worked out that way. So I think England will play one of the group of death teams. If they can get through that, then I think they're probably going to come up against, Italy, France, or one of the series, and they'll get found out at that level.
Yeah, well, we had a good discussion about England earlier. We might come back to the group of death tomorrow. That's Group F: France, Germany, Hungary and Portugal. The clock is against us. But if I finish up, lads, on Group E: Poland, Slovakia, Spain and Sweden. I know Spain have had the COVID outbreaks in their squad. Sergio Busquets and Diego Llorente now from Leeds testing positive as well in that camp. And I think they're adding under 21 players, 11 of them, to that panel as well. So in a bit of disarray heading into this tournament. But Will, who are you fancying in this group? This is actually a really, really tight group. Maybe Slovakia might prop it up, but between Poland, Spain and Sweden, it's really hard to call.
Yeah, it is, because aside from anything else, what's happened with Spain, I believe they're eventually getting their full squad vaccinated today. Spanish public health really dragged their heels on this. The minute that Sergio Busquets was effectively put into quarantine last Friday after their friendly, they should have moved to try and vaccinate the whole squad at that point, because then they were looking at close contacts. Then eventually, as you said, Diego Llorente has now tested positive for COVID-19 as well. So it meant that their entire under-21 squad played against Lithuania and played really well midweek. I think the game was on Tuesday night. And you got to wonder, how much is this going to disrupt Spain's preparations? And not ideal either, where Luis Enrique has come back in midstream after the horrible family tragedy that he had, where he stepped down for a while. He's come back in for the tournament. He's got a lot of young players and players with under 10 caps. And even the fact that some players like Aymeric Laporte, who's now probably a guaranteed starter after he switched allegiance, like, he's not had a huge amount of time playing in that system. They've made the big decision not to bring Sergio Ramos. Sergio Busquets is going to be coming into this off the back of having COVID-19, even if he plays at the tournament itself. So many question marks about Spain coming in, where they look like an interesting new breed of Spanish players coming into the tournament. It's very hard to see them not being undercooked going into it. I think Poland are solid. I think Lewandowski gives them a chance to top this group. And this is what I'm saying. If he's going to win Golden Boot, there's games in there where he can score plenty of goals. It's between the two of them, I think, for top spot. And then a fight to see if we're going to have a third place within there. Slovakia would do really well to qualify, because it's going to be difficult for them to do so. But my boy Skriniar is going to be busy if they're going to get out of the group.
Very finally, Damien, your top two in that group: Poland, Slovakia, Spain, Sweden.
I'm going to go with Sweden. I think they're not a bad side. I think Spain are at the beginning of a new cycle, insofar as they're kind of blooding a lot of young players. There's a lot of unsettled people in Spain with regards to no Madrid players being picked. Any country that's not have had total unity has ever won anything major, and I don't think there's total unity in Spain at the minute. Obviously, the COVID issues aren't ideal. There's a lot of young players coming into the squad, so I think they'll get out of the group, Spain. I think they'll have a good run, but they're going to get caught eventually, probably, if they get to the quarterfinals. But I'm going to go for Sweden and Spain, not necessarily in that order.
Good stuff. Well, listen, lads, that's all we've time for. Damien Delaney and Will O'Callaghan, thanks for your input this morning. And listen, enjoy the tournament, lads. We'll check in again throughout the next few weeks.
Take it easy, lads.
So that is episode 1 of the Euro 2020 show here on Off the Ball in the books. We'll of course preview tomorrow night's game, Turkey against Italy. I'll be joined by Adrian Barry on tomorrow's show. We'll have other guests as well. And of course we'll take another look ahead to that group of death as well, Group F, which is France, Germany, Hungary and Portugal. Not a bad group, and the Per Hungarians sitting in that group with those three teams. If you missed any of the show this morning, the full podcast will be up very shortly on the OTB Sports app and on otbsports.com. You can also watch back the episode on our YouTube channel. That's at youtube.com/Off the Ball. We'll be sure to have plenty of clips and the podcast posted on our Twitter and Instagram at Off the Ball as well. And you'll get me on Twitter at ShaneHannon01. Back tomorrow morning then from 11 a.m. and every single weekday morning throughout the tournament, where there is a game on over the next few weeks. and we'll preview the weekend's games, of course, as well this weekend on tomorrow's show. So Wales-Switzerland is on Saturday, and England hosting Croatia in their opening game on Sunday at Wembley. So same time, same place tomorrow. We'll speak to you then. Have a good one.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power's Save Our Game. Donating 10k to Irish football for every goal England score at the Euros. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.